I forgot. Okay, so the first 18 verses of the Kanse's Bhagavad-Gita, Kanse's Gita Intelligence, which covers the Karmapada. And out of that, the first 9 are going to be discussed today. I'm going to now start the audio. We will, all of you are ready, you can start chatting. So, okay, so let us get going. Here, I would like also to show you the 18 verses that I have selected are also displayed here as 18 phrases which talk about the essence of the wisdom. So out of that, the first 6, that is what we are discussing today. The first in that order is, what is real is self. Therefore, work selflessly with equanimity of mind and dexterity of skills. You must understand that selfish desires lead to anger, and anger destroys human beings. So that is the essence. The first 6 verses summarizes the wisdom of Bhagavad Gita in these simple terms. This is what we are going to see. So let us try to understand. The first nugget of wisdom is, what is real is self. So Krishna started the discourse of Bhagavad Gita by giving Arjuna a bird's eye view of the nature of the self, nature of Atman. If you understand that, then there is nothing else to understand. So Krishna started off with a summary of the knowledge on self. That doesn't mean that once you understood the first few verses of the second chapter where he started his dialogue, everything is wrong. It is not that. He just gave a bird's eye view of the definition of the understanding of the self and the nature of the self. Thereafter, in the rest of the 17 chapters, the rest of the 690 verses, Krishna was giving the details. So unless and until we capture those details, we will definitely not be able to fully understand, comprehend the nature of self. But still, that initial viewpoint is beautiful. And therefore, it is also, it gives us the impetus to try to understand. And for that, he initially introduced the subject of self, and that is beautifully captured in one verse. It can be called as that, if you are studying physics and all, or mathematics and all, we study theorems. And then we actually digress into the details and then work through problems, other things to understand that. Exactly the same thing, but the technique was applied by Krishna when he tried to educate or connect Arjuna with the Atman, the self. So the one verse that is in the second chapter is the theorem on the nature of the self. And that theorem is basically what we will be starting with. So let's look at that. First, let's try to understand the process. We all know that before the Big Bang, before the universe emerged, there was pure self, or pure, we call it pure self. It is infinitude. That was infinitude. First of all, it is very difficult for us to comprehend the concept of infinity. So infinitude was given a name as enormously large. Infinity was given a name called enormously large. That definition, enormously large, in Sanskrit is Brahman. Brahman. So before the Big Bang, what was it? It was Brahman. It was infinitude. It was always there. And From within that infinitude, from within that state of everything, anything that is yet to evolve from it, and anything that will ultimately go back to it, everything included in that is infinitude, or everything. The state of everything is called as Brahman, infinitude. And from that emerged the universe. And when the universe emerged, the forces, manifested forces started emanating. So from the unmanifested infinitude, universal forces became the manifested expression of the Brahman. And that these forces, we must understand, are what drive the existence of everything in this universe, becoming the life force within each one of us. These forces manifest as the enlivening power from within all of us. Life within us is nothing but these universal forces transformed into another more physical form within our bodies. They enliven, these forces enliven us, enliven our minds, enliven our senses, every cell in our body. The power that enlivens is referred, that power which ultimately became manifested into different things within the universe as well as life force within us, that power is called as the self, the universal self. We can, to differentiate between Brahman and this, we can call this self as the universal self. Just for a nomenclature only, there is no difference. It is that Brahman in the manifested form, the universe. We'll call it the self. The self is same in all beings, not only the living beings, but even the non-living beings. Every object has got life in it. And that life force, that force is self. The forces of nature are governed by fundamental laws of what? There are fundamental laws. So we abstract it. Our Sanatana Dharma, Vedas, abstracted it as the laws of coexistence and expansion. The same laws thus became the governing laws of the human mind as well, because it is the same force, manifesting and becoming more and more physical. Ultimately, in our minds, it becomes governing laws of the human mind, the dharma of the human mind. Human mind thus needs to be rooted in these qualities of coexistence and expansion. It is fundamentally, that is the true nature. Selflessness. Selflessness is the true nature of a human being. Selflessness is the true nature of self, the Atman. Atman is a concept. But how can you see it, experience it? Selflessness is the physical experience of the self. Gita intelligence, as I call it, is rooted in this principle of selflessness. Supreme motivations are basically what? The spark of this. Supreme motivations. This selflessness, first of all, how does it actually start getting activated in our minds? In our minds, it has to become the intention, isn't it? In science, we call human beings as an intentional machine, a machine with intentions. Because whenever we do something, whenever we say something, whenever we look at something, whenever we eat something, we intend. We have intentions. It is not just, some kind of reactionary action that we do. Impulsive. It is not just only impulses. We have, most of our actions are intentional. Of course, there are some impulsive actions also. But in general, human beings, when we do something, we are thinking about it and we have some objectives and we try to meet with those objectives. Basically, it is about desires that are running, and that desires stem from our intentions. So we are all intentional machines. This intention is basically the motivator for any action, the motive. Now, what is the best motive that you can have? That is termed as the supreme motivation. And we'll talk about that in detail as we go. let us, for the time being, we are trying to understand terminologies, the supreme motivations. Supreme motivations are all kinds of intentions within our mind which is rooted in selflessness, which are rooted in selflessness. That which we do for selfless purposes. Our intention or our desire to do something which is selfless, that is supreme. That desire is a motive which is called as supreme motivation. And this supreme motivation is a product of our intellect. It is our intellect which is helping us to decide on that. The rational side of our mind, the intellect, the rational side of our mind is called as the intellect. So then what happens is there is the emotional side also, which is called as the mind, which we, in our spiritual philosophical parlance, we call it as the mind, and the first one as the intellect. Intellect, and this is the mind, which is about emotions and feelings. And then what? So our intellect decides, the mind actually feels, and then we start doing things with our physical body. And when we start doing things with our physical body, how good you are at doing what is basically what dexterity is all about. The skill the what you call the degree of skill in what you are doing, that is dexterity. So this is how whole translation from the unmanifested in Brahman to the manifested individual, and then the actions thereof. This is how all these things work. So if you look at it, the first thing is the supreme motivations. The intention has to be supreme. And then it has to start controlling, shaping the mind. So before that, therefore, the intellect. What do you do with your intellect? How to shape your thoughts? How to shape your intentions and your thinking? It requires you to develop attitudes. You have to understand what attitudes are. You have to understand what your aptitudes are. And you have to understand how to control your mind and withstand the onslaught of feelings, which is the power of fortitude. So it is about developing focus. And it is about developing faith, knowledge-based belief, faith. So focus and faith. So it is about your intellect shaping, equanimity of the mind, the emotions, the feelings. We need to control the mind so that it is equanimous. The intellect has to actually control the mind to be equanimous. So how to shun likes and dislikes? How do you actually go away from likes and dislikes? The pendulum of likes and dislikes, pendulum swing of likes and dislikes, and then be steady. For that, you need to understand your beliefs, control your beliefs, conviction, and the conviction that your mind develops and confidence that you have in you, in yourself, your capabilities, etc. For that, you need to love your own inner self and be inspired. And the third, of the dexterity, which is the physical capabilities of the senses and the body as a conglomerate of one unit. So how to become skilled, how to become dexterous. What are the processes, practices that you have to adopt so that you become skilled, you become dexterous? You need to understand what is constructive, aggressive, and destructive type of skills, behaviors. For that, you need to develop the capability of viveka, differentiation, and also have the power to expand and enhance yourself. So if you really look at Gita intelligence, if you look at Bhagavad-Gita as it is given to Arjuna by Krishna, Bhagavad-Gita, which is now summarized as Gita intelligence, the intelligence that you need to bring forth into your thinking and actions such that you can evolve into an individual, evolve into divine nature as an individual. Divine nature, Daivik Sampath. You need to do this. You need to shape supreme motivations. You need to develop equanimity, and you need to develop dexterity in action in this world. Because we are looking at Bhagavad Gita as a tool for you to live in this world in a better manner. So we require supreme motivations powered by equanimity and dexterity. Just having good motivations is not enough. You need to have equanimity. That is, you need to have the mind that can withstand both successes and failures, partiality and impartiality, all those things. And of course, develop capabilities, skills. You just cannot be, you just will not be able to help others if you are not skilled in some areas. So you need to develop this dexterity of skill. So in a nutshell, if you see, it is about translating that Atman's powers, extracting what the power of the self has into your BMI, body, mind, and intellect, and shaping the intellect, mind, and the body in that order, and to produce divinity in the outside world through our actions. This is what Gita intelligence is teaching us. This is what the whole purpose of Bhagavad Gita is. So you can say that the purpose of Bhagavad Gita is to bless us all with this Gita intelligence. And that Gita intelligence can be summarized in this one slide. The purpose of it. The purpose of Gita intelligence is nothing but this. You see that self is now pulsing through us as selflessness. And if we do not let the selflessness rule our motivations and mind, intellect, mind, and the body, then we are lost. We become devilish. We become Rakshasas and Asuras instead of Devas. So how to actually elevate yourself from the level of Rakshasas and Asuras to the level of an Asura, to the level of a Deva is basically what the purpose of Gita intelligence is. To develop the Gita intelligence. The purpose of that is this. This is where we start. So the self. I think all of you would have generally got an idea of what self is now. Self. In very, superfluous manner, at least initially, you should understand what self is. You should then constantly, whenever you have a time, whenever you have time to think about these things, try to start from that point of me, the I, the self, the Atman, and understand what the self is fundamentally from first principles. Starting from first principles. In physics and all, when you study, you said, okay, from fundamental principles, and that is how you start analyzing most of the concepts. So here again, if you really want to understand Gita intelligence, if you want to really understand Bhagavad Gita, which is about translating the wisdom into actionable things within our brains, therefore it is Gita intelligence. The actionable wisdom is Gita intelligence. That if you really want to achieve and translate it into your thought plane and then the action plane, what is really required is for you to understand the self, the Atman. So every day, at least spend initially, at the point of meditation or something like that, when you get up, 3 minutes of focusing your mind, do this initially. What is self? Try to figure out what the self is. We given the process of how the self got into you. So that should definitely give you an idea of what self is. So do that every day over a period of time. I can tell you that you will really start appreciating the self. I can assure you that your concept of self will become so strong that sometimes you may even become, to the others, even for the outsiders, sometimes they might feel that you are an atheist or something like that. This happens, but that is how the power of the self within us will give us that confidence. So, of course, don't be arrogant of the understanding of the self. That is all. If you really understand that, that is what Gita intelligence is all about. So let's move ahead now. So the first verse is the theorem on the nature of self. This is a theorem on the nature of self. The unreal has no being, and there is no non-being of the real. Those who realize this understand this truth, understand the ultimate truth. That is what 216 is. Na sato vidyate bhavo, na abhavo vidyate satha. Ubayorabi drishtondam stvanyas tattvadarshibhihi. So, the person who really understands this fundamental nature of the self is actually a tattvadarshi. He has really seen the ultimate knowledge. So that one line, nasato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate sataha, is the ultimate definition of self, the theorem of self, the nature of the self. The unreal has no being. There is no non-being of the real. Think about it. You can actually meditate on this line, one line, and then you will start seeing light. Okay. To help you to see light, I will briefly explain that with some illustrations here. So let us look at the self as the infinite. I have shown an extended blue line to indicate the infinitude of the self. Now look at the self. The self is infinite everywhere. Now each one of us, consider each one of us as tapping the self like this. That dotted line, within the dotted line. So what happens is that infinite self, which is infinite, I suddenly, with my mind, I restrict it within these dotted lines. That infinite line has now become a small line. Within that, I think that I am that. Ignorance, out of ignorance. Currently enlivened by the BMI, because I am using my mind to understand the self which is beyond even the mind. And the mind, therefore, which is restricted, thinks that the mind is the self within that, which is the present condition, which is the present condition for the mind. Currently enlivened by your BMI, the self in the present thinks that I am that restricted thing. What about the past and the present? In the past, before I came, because this is the point at which you are born. And this is the point at which you will die. And my mind thinks that the self is born and the self is dead at this point. So the birth to death, my present life, my present energy as life within, I call it as the self. I working through the mind. And the mind is what decides. And therefore, mind itself takes over that role. That is what is happening. But what happened to the self before your birth, the past? And what happens to yourself after your death, the future? It is there. The self is not dying or is not getting born. The past, the present, and the future. The self is always there because self is eternal. Self is infinite. It is eternal. There is no beginning. There is no end. It is always there. So, that is why Krishna defines. So, the self as real. The physical entity, the identity of me as within this body is temporary. That is it. That's fine. That is the mind taking identity with it. But I am there in the past. I am there in the future also. My real self is eternal. I am infinite. I am eternal and I am infinite. I was always there. I will always be there. I can never die. So, something in Advaita, Vedanta, they have technically defined what real is. For something to be real, it has to exist in all three frames of time. There are only three frames for a time. What are they? The past, the present, and the future. Those are the three frames of reference for time. So something that exists in all three frames of time, all three time frames, that only is defined as real. Anything else, that is, if something is existing only in two of those frames or only one of those frames, then it is not real. It is temporary. Because you now look at each one of our identity. I am there in the present. That's it. In the past, 60, 70 years back, I was not there. In the future, maybe 30, 40 years later, I won't be there. So in the future and in the past, I will not be there. I am there only in the present. In only one time frame, I am there. Therefore, this BMI is not real, but the self, which is not there only now, it is always there. Therefore, is the only thing that is real within me. This hand, this skin, this muscles, the eye, nothing is permanent. It is temporary. But what is permanent, what is real is the self. So, now what are the unreal things? If you look at it, unreal things, my body, my mind, my intellect, they are all there only when the body is there. So that is unreal. My body is unreal. My mind is unreal. My intellect is unreal. So unreal thing does not have any real existence or being. I am not permanent. Therefore, I cannot have a being which is lasting. So unreal as no being. Meera, yes, Meera.
Sir, ഇതിനകത്ത് sir പറഞ്ഞ മാതിരി, this is a wonderful, I loved that explanation of real and unreal. Every time I attend, there is something exciting. So this ego, where you try to say that mind takes the ownership. That ego with our mind, is it something that is temporary?
Yes, because this ego is actually a function of your intellect.
Okay.
Yeah, intellect meaning, okay, in science we call mind. That's it. Because there is no mind. Intellect and mind being differentiated as two things is in our Indic wisdom.
What I had understood earlier, we don't know whether my understanding is right, but is it from the infinitude, when it is manifested into the universe, is it the ego also getting manifested along with it?
Definitely there is an ego for the universe also.
Okay.
That ego is basically, not comparable to the kind of ego that we talk about in human beings.
Okay.
The powers of coexistence and expansion, etc., are actually expressible only because of the identity of the forces with this physical manifested entity, which is the universe.
Once again, sir.
Yeah, the physical manifested entity, which is the universe, which has come from the infinitude.
Okay.
I will do one thing. I will come back to this by explaining this one link, which I have already kept that link here because I knew that this kind of questions will arise. Krishnamar, I will come back to you after this. Okay, so look at this. Okay, this is what happened. These are all manifestations of the infinite. So I'm just showing a part of the, solar system, which is there are multiple such solar systems. Okay. So this solar system, if it had intelligence like the human beings, okay, that's why I said, human beings, within human beings, the kind of ego that we are talking about is slightly different. I mean, much more, lower level of ego, which we will discuss as we progress. But in the universe also, there is this one solar system, multiple solar systems. Can you not in the universe differentiate between one solar system and the other solar system, etc.?
Yes.
Okay, so in effect, these solar systems are exhibiting ownership, right? Because this is one, let's say I'm showing only one of those solar systems. This solar system, internally is thinking that I am solar system A.
Oh, okay.
And there is
Okay.
another solar system B, C, D, multiple solar systems are there. Right? Okay, so each one of them thinks that I am a solar system. I have so many stars and planets in my control.
Okay.
That is the kind of identity of these entities, manifested entities that they take up.
Okay.
So that identity is basically what we call as the ego. Your ownership in one group of things. Okay. So now I will answer
in progress. Maybe I can understand. This might be the principles of attached to the manifestations that we call it as ego.
Yes, because it's a fundamental property of manifestation.
Okay. Fine.
Fundamental property of manifestation, the fundamental property of nature.
Okay, great.
So so this is how. Okay, now we will proceed, and when you can raise your hand if you further have more clarifications required. Immediately we will clarify it and go. Okay, so this is it, and this is actually controlled by three forces. The fundamental properties of nature. That is rhythm. There is a rhythm. You see this. Is not there a rhythm in this? Right? These planets are not clashing. They are circulating in elliptical orbits around the sun. Nobody is interfering with each other. Right? And there is a rhythm also. We know that because living on Earth, we know that the sun will rise in the morning and will set in the evening. It is going to rise from the east and it will go and set in the west. All these things are rhythmic motions. It is all controlled. So there is this force, three forces of nature, three properties of nature: rhythm, expansion, and this universe is expanding. Physics has proved that. And there is inertia, and this inertia is basically is what actually keeps things in order. So rhythm, expansion, and inertia are the three forces. Initially, when they were in equilibrium, there was nothing, and it is said that there was that our Vedic knowledge, Indic wisdom says that there was some kind of imbalance that happened in inertia and expansion, and out emerged the universe that we were talking about now, isn't it? Out emerged this universe. Boom, it happened. Now, let us look at that. Now let us look at each one of us. Where are we? We are situated in this dot. This is the truth. All of us, everyone, all the people, our ancestors, all of us, the billions of people here now, and the billions of people who are yet to be born in this earth are all going to be located in that dot. Rulers, common people, musicians, actors, perfectionists, average people, sculptors, football players, everyone. Just imagine millions and millions of such people. Autocrats, dictators, selfish people, selfless people, compassionate people, crude people, arrogant people, ruthless people. Everyone existed on that one dot. Imagine. That is what Carl Sagan mentioned. Every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there on this mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam. Imagine, there is perhaps no, that is why he said there is no better demonstration of the folly of human conceit than this distant image of our tiny world. It underscores our responsibility to deal more kindly with one another, coexist and expand, and to preserve and cherish the pale blue dot, the earth, preservation, sustainability of the earth, the only home we have ever known, the only home in this vast expanse of the universe where we live. And we, in that only small dot, we become arrogant, egoistic, and fight with each other, becoming greedy and all the nonsense that we commit. So this is what we are. The earth. We are on that earth, that dot in the whole scheme of things. Pratham, manifestation, sustainability and enrichment. Expansion, manifested by creativity and productivity. Inertia, by stability and peace. So these are the actual forces that are governing this universe. This is the power of the infinite, manifested in this universe as sustainability, enrichment, creativity, productivity, stability, and peace ultimately. So as a human being, if I am able to tap these powers, then I am resonating with the divinity, resonating with the Brahman, the infinite. That is what our Sanatana Dharma is telling us. And that essence of that Sanatana Dharma is captured in the Upanishads. And the essence of those Upanishads, multiple Upanishads, captured in one document, one scripture, that is Bhagavad-Gita. So in essence, what is Gita intelligence? Gita intelligence is all about shaping our mind and intellect and developing our skill sets. So our intellect, mind, and the body to work in a cooperative, coexisting manner so that we all can expand. Using, therefore, within our minds, the forces unleashed are sustainability, enrichment, creativity, productivity, stability, and peace. If that is done with this purpose, the highest purpose, which is coexistence and expansion, we become divine. We become personifications of divinity, manifestations of divinity, the manifestation of Brahman. So self-analytics, which is what basically our Pattern Institute, we are calling this as self-analytics, to understanding the self and then translating the power of that self into sustainability, enrichment, creativity, productivity, stability, and peace for coexistence and expansion is basically what it's all about. So analyzing what is required to do all this is self-analytics, understanding self as well as tapping the power of self to be a player in this divine drama. For that, we need attitudes that facilitate sustainability and enrichment, strategies that help in creativity and productivity, processes that bring in stability and peace. This is the content of Gita intelligence. This is the content of Bhagavad-Gita. Bhagavad-Gita in 700 verses is describing attitudes that facilitate sustainability and enrichment, strategies that help in creativity and productivity, and processes that bring stability and peace. That is it, in essence. This is another way of looking at the essence of Gita intelligence, the essence of Bhagavad-Gita.
Someone has raised their hand.
Yes, Krishna Kumar. Krishnamaji, you can, yeah.
So my question is just continuing on this.
Yeah.
Like I said, the ego is unreal. So what happens to our experiences and the wisdom we are gaining, whatever the discussions are happening, and that is also it's finite, right? It's going to go once we.
Yes.
It's also unreal in that sense.
Right. What is the container in which all these experiences are happening? It is the mind.
Self.
It is the mind.
Okay, mind. Yeah.
It is the mind. Self is nothing. Self has no responsibility for it.
Okay.
It is the mind That is the receptacle in which when the self comes in, the mind becomes active, and it then traps the self, and the mind tells me that the jiva is the experiencer.
Okay.
And that is temporary. So if you are feeling that is what we are coming to now. Okay. Is that
so
yeah.
basically, to conclude, like we have an option to play the game, right? The game of life, knowingly or unknowingly. The Gita, which tells you to indulge in it in a knowing manner, rather than
When you say indulge, it is about selflessly indulging in it. Selflessly indulging in it, so that sustainability, expansion, productivity, creativity, stability, peace are taken care of. These 6 factors are taken care of. So for that, obviously, it is a complicated affair. Stability, there are 6 factors. So how can you actually, if somebody lives this world meeting all these 6 requirements? So immediately we know it is a complicated stuff. So for that, a lot of psychoanalytic exposure is required, and that psychoanalytic, because the mind is ultimately the player in this field. In this field, the Kshetra mind is the player, and that mind needs therefore to be conditioned, and therefore it is that we have so much of Upanishads wisdom, and which is again summarized in 700 verses of Bhagavad-Gita. So otherwise Bhagavad-Gita could have been one-liner or one verse. But we have 700. Why? Because it is not very easy. It is something that requires constant reflection, constant identification, and constant practice with these things. And how to do that? Because we are interacting with multitude of factors, definitely it is not a straightforward formula. It requires you to evolve, because the mind itself is an evolving product, and the environment is another complicated product. The mind is interacting with the environment, and therefore there are more complexity, and therefore it is a process of learning, practicing, regularly going forward. And what are the strategies that are required? That is what is Gita intelligence. That is what Bhagavad-Gita is. Okay, so going forward. Now, this again, look at this. Basically, what Krishna Kumar Nambudriya also was talking about. Now, and in the negative scenario, lack of confidence, low esteem is basically what drives us down. Many of us find in this kind of a situation. I mean, all of us, not many, all of us land up in this kind of a situation sometime or the other. Some more often than others. That is all the difference. Lack of confidence, low self-esteem. How did it happen? Now, there are various reasons that can take you to this kind of a condition. Lack of effort. Lack of, an inner drive. Lack of positive enthusiasm. Positive thinking. These are some of the factors that, drive us out. And we are generally full of vanity, delusions, shyness, and laziness. All these kind of things can be filling us. Yeah, we can go on elaborating these points in the sense of what do you lack and what you are full of. So many things. But I have just put representative factors. This is basically why we are being driven to this lack of confidence and low self-esteem. On the other side of things, on the other end of the spectrum, is confidence and full of self-esteem. Full of effort, drive, enthusiasm, positive thinking, and lack of vanity. You just see on the left side and the right side, it is only a question of that lack, the titles, lack of, full of, being interchanged. That's it. So these are the two ends, extreme ends of the conditions that we land up with in this physical frame of BMI, in this universe, in this world. What is really required is to, transform ourselves into, from the left to the right side. And that the power that we utilize to move ourselves from the left to the right side is what is called as the self-effort. The power is that self-effort. It is that power within us working through the mind, making us do things. That is self-effort. In self-effort that drives us towards the right side is basically the expression of the self through the mind. This is self-effort, and this is also defined, but we'll look at that when we come to that. We have already seen that in chapter 8 and all previously, but again I'm looking at it from a bird's eye point of view now. This self-effort, you should have the mind to put in self-effort. That is what Gita is teaching us. Because if we really have the mind, that means you are believing, you have faith in the self which is infinite, all-powerful and pure. If you do not put self-effort and you live in this cocooned shell of no confidence and low self-esteem, that means you are not believing in the power of the self. If the belief in the power of the self, your faith in the self is predominant, then you will shake yourself free from this I am a loser feeling and extricate yourself out of it and then come out into the open and fight for it. That extricating power is called as self-effort. And therefore in Vedanta, it is considered as the Parama Purushartha. It is one of the extreme, arthas that we all are blessed with. Purushartha, the power of the self. Purusha, Artha, the wealth, Artha of Purusha. Purushartha, the wealth of the self. That is self-effort. So Vedanta defines self-effort as the Purushartha that we are all blessed with and we should tap it. If we can only tap it, if we have ultimate faith in the infinitude, all-powerfulness and the purity of the self within each one of us, within us. So, it is about the weaknesses, shedding the weaknesses. What are the weaknesses of the mind that we need to shed so that we can move from the left to the right? It is doubts. Doubt about the self. Wrong impressions. I am the mind, mind. So what can I be other than my mind? Because this is what is helping me to think. And this is what is helping me to learn things. And therefore mind, and my mind is not powerful. I don't have enough memory power. I have a problem with my memory. So how can I learn? Wrong impressions. That is wrong impression because that memory is redefinable. Powers can be brought in. And indecision. Intellect is now therefore not able to really stick to something. Indecision of the intellect. Doubts, wrong impressions and indecision are the weaknesses of the mind that play a trick on us. And these doubts, wrong impressions and indecisions are all arising because of this ego of you identifying with the Bhuyamai. So the ego is now playing negative things on you as the weaknesses of the mind. Instead, we need to move from that to clarity of mind, right impressions, viveka and steady intellect. No indecisions. Judgments are correct and strong and you go forward with viveka. So that actually, it's not weakness, it's the strengths of the mind. The strengths that is coming because of the power of the self within you. Joys of the self in the mind, producing clarity of mind, right impressions and steady intellect. This is basically the transformation that is required, and this is what Bhagavad-Gita is trying to do. This is what the purpose of Gita intelligence is. When you are able to do this, you are blessed with the Gita intelligence. Our intellect is blessed. when we are trying to do this, when we are able to do this with faith, producing self-effort, there is only one way you can do it, which is putting in self-effort. And thus you will become a rishi. Somebody who regularly practices this and goes up the ladder of divinity, seer, selfless, equanimous, equipoised, and rooted in the self. You become a seer. Now, look at the lack of effort, when all those things, your negativities, your incapabilities, etc. are what? Is temporary. It can be changed. Therefore, it is unreal. Because today you are not good in something. Tomorrow you can change it. Or yesterday you are not good. Today you are good. Because of some effort, you put in self-effort and you change. And therefore, these conditions are not real. They are unreal. But what about this? This is your this positivity, this knowledge, the radiation of knowledge, etc. Is your nature, because you are infinite knowledge, you are infinite bliss, Sat. You are infinite existence, and therefore you are all powerful. You are infinite knowledge, therefore you know everything. You can, yourself is capable of helping you to do that. Infinite knowledge, and you are infinite happiness. You are bliss personified, really speaking. But your mind is put a wrapper on it, and therefore you are feeling sad. So this is your nature, cannot be lost. It's the nature of self, and therefore it is real. This is what is real. The right side is what is real. You can never lose. Why? Because you are, first of all, you are not lost in the first place itself. You are thinking that I am lost, but you are not. You are not lost. That is the faith that you need to develop. This is basically what this verse is teaching you. This is why it is called as the essence, the theorem of the power of self. There is no, the unreal has no being. And there is no non-being of the real. So just wait, unreal has no being. Look at this, unreal has no being. My failures, my weaknesses, that is unreal. So it is therefore it does not exist. There is no being for that. And there is no non-being of the real. You cannot say that you do not have clarity of thinking, etc. Because that is what you are. That is why it said you can never lose, because you are never lost in the first place. That is the reason why Krishna started with the whole dialogue with what? Ashocyan. You are grieving for something that you should not really be grieving at all. That's how he started. But he is now explaining the situation through another one verse, which is this, 2:16. The unreal has no being. There is no non-being of the real. This is such a wonderful message that you can take home from the beginning itself of Bhagavad-Gita. And once you are really enmeshed and embedded in this, then there is no way of going back on this. So, this is it. Your fears, your lack of confidence, doubts and indecisions, insecurities, all are your properties of the intellect mind. All are the properties of intellect mind and the body and the senses. These properties are changeable. They can be made different. They were not there yesterday, or even if they are today, they may not be there tomorrow. They can be thrown out. Realize you are. So what is the Gita intelligence? What is it that Gita intelligence is teaching us? That is what is written in the last line. Realize your knowledge deficits, your deficiencies. Realize it first. First of all, you have to realize. My mind has to realize that, yes, I lack in this area, and therefore the reaction is not, oh, I cannot do anything and then go down. No. First, you have to understand that knowledge deficits, and then look forward, look ahead, grab opportunities that can help you to change that situation. Grab opportunities. learn. And when you grab opportunities, you may have to learn. You cannot just be lazy. Learn, change yourself, and expand. That's it. That is Gita intelligence. Realize your knowledge deficits, grab your opportunities, learn, change, and expand. That is what the Gita intelligence is. Okay, so in a very simple one-liner, you can say, what does Gita intelligence achieve? What does Bhagavad-Gita achieve? What is it that Bhagavad-Gita is giving you? What is the wisdom that is given by Bhagavad-Gita? It is that you should realize your knowledge deficits. You have to grab opportunities, be positive, grab opportunities, learn, thus change yourself and expand. That is it. So if we understand, if we can really have faith in this wisdom, in this one-liner wisdom, that is enough for all Bhagavad Gita is known to you then. Because you are the infinite. Because you are the self, not the BMI. You are the self, and self does not lack anything. Only the BMI is lacking something. So change. That's the first nugget of wisdom that we all have to learn. Therefore, carry out your duties in this life to the best of your abilities. With what attitude? Selflessness. And what mindset? Equanimity. And what physical elements to bring in? Dexterity and skills. That's it. Therefore, carry out your duties in this life with selflessness, equanimity, and dexterity. So, in one verse, the whole Bhagavad Gita is contained. And if we are able to appreciate, think about it, look into that in depth, and then try to translate the message of this into your action plane in the world of living, then you have the actual formula for success. And therefore, that second chapter summarizes the Karma Yoga in these three terms. What is it? Law of work. Your authority is to work only, not results. Work selflessly. Don't work with an eye on the results. Don't be inactive either. Karmanyeva adhikaraste ma bhaleshu katajanaha ma karma bala hedubur ma te sangotsa akarmani. And then, okay, yes. So your motivation should not be selfish gains. You work for the process. Work because it is your duty. And do all your next. Yogastha kurukarmani sangam tektva dhananjaya. Do all your work by abandoning any attachment to the pleasures of the results thereof. Be motivated by the joys of the self. Samatvam yoga uchyate, because samatvam yoga uchyate. The equanimity of mind is called as Karma Yoga. And then he says, endowed with this wisdom of equanimity, you will cast off immediately the mental fluctuations of hope and despair. And because why? And then reach that state, karma sukha ushalam. Dexterity of skills is Karma Yoga. And it is therefore attained through the previous state, which is equanimity. And that equanimity is attained through what? Through your sense of duty in getting to work, not without looking at the results. So, three things. This makes up the actual process, the process of karma. What is it? Skills development is aided through equanimity, and equanimity is reached by your sense of duty and lack of looking at, and not by being not interested in the results, but just the work. So this is 247, 248, and 250 summarizes the Karma Yoga. So that is how you should all be working. Selflessness, if you look at it, if you look at the unseen strand in this, what is it? Selflessness. Because we were looking at that, right? Selflessness. It is the selflessness that is powering, pulsing supreme motivations, equanimity, and dexterity of skills. And that you can see in the 3 verses that define Karma Yoga. Selflessness is the very purpose of our life, and that is what is stringing together the process of Karma Yoga. So what is required is we need to exhibit selflessness in all our actions. And this is the law of work as enumerated by Karma Yoga. So that is what is taken. So I think what we'll do is, I don't think we'll be, I will cover all the 9. I think probably we can discuss now something, some doubts if you have, and we will proceed from, we'll go slow, and try to, assimilate these things. We will discuss this also on the WhatsApp group for the next, maybe in a couple of weeks, and we will meet only after a couple of weeks. So after that, we will come back and then see and look at the first one, which is in detail with practical capability, practical, with practical things. Okay, that we will not do at the moment. So we can do discuss these whatever we have covered so far, and try to assimilate it. And if there is more, we can also discuss in the WhatsApp group. So before I actually go, let us discuss. Yeah.
Daddy,
Yeah, is there anybody who wants to actually, Meera, you are okay with your clarifications, previous clarifications?
I have to keep thinking, sir, reflecting on it. Maybe I'll get there someday.
Okay. Yes, yes, Krishna ji, yes.
When you said the selflessness, like when you do your actions, selflessness should be how do we actually again define in practical terms? So for example, maybe I'm angry with my subordinate, or maybe angry in the office, I'm angry at my home, or or something happens which I don't like. And in that situation, how do you define that selflessness? And that's where we practically get confused.
Right.
That we all know everything, but again, under correct situations, what do we do? And how do you know that what is selflessness?
Okay. So I don't think I'll be answering that immediately, because that is basically the details of these 3 processes, which I'm going to look at in the next sessions. Next session, for example, where I will try to come up with the definitions and actually go through the processes and define these things in real world application level. So you will understand what selflessness is in the real workplaces. Okay, yeah. So I will, at the moment, if I get into that, it will take another 1 hour to describe that. So we will go into that in the next session. Yeah. Okay. So Ajit.
Namaskaram, sir.
Namaskaram.
Yeah, sir. In fact, so first of all, to thank you so much, because to see that this is continuing. I mean, I'm so thankful to all of us. Are so thankful to you that it is continuing. And I thought I'd just clarify something. I don't know, probably it might be right, because earlier sessions you have explained this. There was a ma'am who was asking about ego and stuff like that. My understanding of the thing is, there is I think this is what you have told us earlier. So there is this Atman and there is the Brahman. Okay, so the Atman is actually, Advaita talks like, it's purely one with the Brahman. The moment
it is the same, only terminology we are using.
Yes.
Different terminology to describe Brahman in another situation. That's all.
Correct. You have explained this earlier. So I'm actually just quoting what you had mentioned earlier to us.
Yeah.
So the Atman and the Brahman, actually, Atman is a part of the Brahman. It's exactly that.
It is
but
not
the moment.
Yeah, sorry, that part, the word part should not be used. Atman is Brahman. Brahman is Atman.
Yeah, Brahman is Atman, absolutely right. Atman is Brahman itself. But then, what happens is we try to, because of avidya, like, that is what, because of lack of our experiment, because of ignorance, we think, this is more in tune with the body, mind, and the intellect. And we forget that both are one. Probably that is the one that leads to this, they call it the ego. I mean, that is, I thought, because this is what you have explained to us earlier. And that part, I think I've clearly understood probably. I mean, I'm sure that's it, actually. I mean, this is what you have explained it to us.
Absolutely. I mean, only thing is, you can actually define it in the reverse fashion. That is not ego. Ego is creating that.
Ego is creating that. Yeah, the linkage with the body, mind, and the intellect is what creating that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Get it. Absolutely.
That is actually that is the process of physicality. You know, in scientific terms, you can call it as the process of physicality. That is the self, the Brahman, the self only, same. You know, only for reference purposes, we will call it as Atman.
Absolutely. Yes.
Because it is, like, for example, you know, you are, let's say you are the general manager, you are the CEO in your company, let's say.
Sure.
So people call you as CEO.
Sure.
Yeah, at home, your son or my wife does not call you CEO.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
You will be called as Ajit, isn't it? Or dad or whatever.
Absolutely.
Actually, the dad and CEO are the same.
Absolutely. Yes.
At home, you are called the dad, and in the office, you are called the CEO, the boss.
Sure. Absolutely.
That way, Brahman sitting inside the house is called as Atman.
Absolutely.
That is
yes. Thank you so much. Because I mean, somewhere, I mean,
I will. It is not for complicating it, but I will tell you one thing. There is one difference. The analogy is only, you know, in these things, that the words that I used, only it will be restricted to only that.
Sure.
Because the dad inside the house and the CEO inside, there is no. I mean, the saying, they are the same, but in the self, in the parlance of the self, it is everywhere.
True.
Okay, so that part you should know. I'm not taking into the analogy. It is only to explain the difference. I've given that restricted analogy.
True. Might be in simple terms. It's something like, I mean, when the electricity, when passes through a bulb, it becomes a bulb. When it passes through the fan, it is the fan. But the basic thing is the electricity.
It shows us a light.
It shows a light. When it goes through a mixie, it shows us the grinding stuff. When it goes through the TV, it shows what it over there. You know.
Doesn't mean that the light is electricity.
Absolutely.
Or the
yes.
Yeah, things like that. Something like that. You know. I mean, analogically, just for the simple mind to understand.
Yes. No, I remember you had stated this lot of examples like this in our earlier sessions. So exactly. I was just trying to remember that. Thank you so much once again, sir. Good to see you all together once again. Good to see you, sir.
The thing is that this powerful knowledge is basically what is embedded in 216, the 16th verse of the second verse, the sloka, which is an important verse, and that is the reason why I took it up. And then we discussed 247, 248, and 250 now.
Yes.
The practical implications of 247, 248, and 250. We will look at it in the next session. That is basically why I stopped it, because if you go into that, I will have to run through in the next 15 minutes. Instead of that, that we discuss now and then get back into that in the next session.
Sure, definitely. So great to see you. I mean, so good to see you.
Thank you.
So nice. Really good. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Yes, Krishna you have something more to say?
No. I'll lower my hand.
Okay. Your hand is still raised.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who? Raised. Yeah. Anandji, your words of wisdom also will be helpful.
No question of wisdom, I'm also sitting and learning each and every word. I'm also, what do you say, refining, as you rightly said. I'm refining whatever learned. I can never have that wisdom, I can, what I learned little bit on ego, I think I can share whether it is right or not. I'm not very clear about it. As you rightly said, the manifested part of the self is called ego, right? Without ego, nobody on this earth can perform. But unfortunately, the moment we say ego, we give a negativity to that particular word.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, that is the
Right.
problem. Yes.
Correct. How that negativity comes only because of these three gunas, which are attracted, which are assimilated into that particular ego. The moment
Yeah.
these three, the three gunas get absorbed in various proportions, that ego gets transformed into a different ego, which goes into selfishness.
Selfishness.
Otherwise, this ego, which is coming as self, is a pure ego. It's like a pure mirror, which is not contaminated at all.
Right. Right.
True.
In fact, another slight analogy, again, analogy to be restricted to the words that I use only. Like, for example, as Ajit was talking about, the electricity passing through the filament of an electric bulb produces light. So assume that the bulb is intelligent like human beings. What will it say? It says, I am light.
True.
Yeah. So that is its ego. Ego meaning its physical nature expressing itself.
Correct.
And tying itself to only that. That's it.
Correct.
Yeah.
See,
Yes.
the difference between that solar system ego and the personal ego of our individuals is we have been permitted to do whatever we want with that ego.
Yeah. Yes.
Whereas that solar system egos are very, very clearly defined.
Defined and restricted. Yes. The light. Yeah. That is the difference between human beings and the light bulb. Yeah. So, and that is the reason why Krishna or Vedavyasa wrote Bhagavad-Gita. So you can try to understand that there is no Bhagavad-Gita, there is no point in giving a Bhagavad-Gita to a light bulb.
I think a lot of people have raised. I'm stopping.
Yeah. So Datta, Datta, no, I think, how do I pronounce your name? Datta? Ivy, sorry. Yeah, Ivy, yes. Yeah, you had raised your hand, so please, go ahead.
Is it me? Yeah.
Yes, Ivy. Yes,
Yeah.
first Ivy, and then we'll go to Meera. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, Ivy Datta can.
Yes. Actually, by mistake, it is raised.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't.
Okay, fine. Yeah, okay, Meera. Yes, Meera then.
Yeah, thank you so much, Anandji, for clarifying the ego of the universe and how is it different. The ego of the universe, as Sir said, the rhythm, expansion, and inertia. That is also the same element that is working within our ego as vasanas. So that is. We can call it the one which is the universe ego. It is exactly the properties of the universe that is manifested, and it is working upon this rhythm, expansion, and inertia without being altered in any way or maneuvered in any way.
Yeah,
right?
It has, but it is getting changed because of our mind.
Okay.
Yeah, the selfish mind. That is different from the ego. The selfishness is not ego. Ego is a much more severe form of that. Selfishness is a much more severe form of that ego.
Okay. Maybe it is not filtered upon this ignorance that we have, right? The universe ego. But here, the combinations have quite a lot of filtering that happens with a lot of ignorance that comes in.
That is part of the mind's problems.
Thank you so much.
So
a lot of explanations around it.
In fact, you can see this. This is this thing. The rhythm, expansion, and inertia are what is basically, that is exactly what sattva, rajas, and tamo gunas are. Rhythm is sattva-gunam, expansion is rajogunam, and inertia is tamo-gunam. So that is inbuilt into this physical world, universe. The moment there is a imbalance in the gunas, When Rajas starts predominating slightly, then suddenly there is an expansion of activity, explosion of activity. And that is what is signified in the, that is, a Big Bang, whatever, it's a philosophical way of looking at the Big Bang. It is also the way within our minds things work. If Sattva, Rajas, Tamo gunas are in balance, we will, nothing happens. But that the moment Rajas, passion comes, or even ignorance comes, we start acting. And the world is created. Our world is created. Okay, those Sattva, Rajas, Tamo gunas and all we'll be coming to subsequently. But at the moment, I introduced in our what you call as the secular terms, so that we can also connect it with the gunas that our forefathers defined, whether Vyasa defined or Upanishad gurus defined previously, which is basically nothing but the same things in a different language. That's all.
I remember just going along with this, I just got reminded of this epigenetics also that we had talked about, and we had a workshop on how these gunas can be changed, and over a period of time we can change the genetics as well. So that is also something that is
Yeah. In fact, that is the process of evolution, and therefore, it actually matches with science as well as what we were discussing previously. And the processes that we are going to describe in the Bhagavad-Gita as karma, as well as bhakti, and as well as jnana, are all pointing towards the same principles in a different language. That's all. It is not that I am not saying that we defined science. Absolutely not. That's a different way. Science came up with these findings, and it so happens that because both our forefathers and the new scientists were talking of the same thing, of the truth, there can be only one truth, and therefore both are leading towards the same truth. That's all. So that beauty is basically what we need to appreciate. And if we really appreciate that beauty in this knowledge, in this wisdom, in fact, the science is coming out with the knowledge, and the wisdom of that knowledge is already there with us, as in the room of in the form of Upanishads and all. Connecting that is basically what is required in detail, not at the superficial level. So that's basically what, especially our youngsters and all, when they really get that connection, there will be pride in this wisdom. Otherwise, is basically what people go and talk bad about our culture, our systems, etc., because they don't really understand it. So I think this is where I think we as seniors have to play a role in making our youngsters understand this without any other, we don't bring in any dogmas and other things. We can tell them the scientific truth about this wisdom and knowledge. The science, the knowledge that the science is bringing out, exploding, and the wisdom that is actually should be ruling this knowledge. That is what our contributions should be in. And I think that is where we have a lot of stuff to do still. And otherwise, I think we'll be failing in our duties. So yeah, okay. So I think we can